with Hassan Ben Imran, who joins me from Istanbul. He's with the Law for Palestine organization. Hassan, good to have you on the program. How does this recognition help the Palestinian cause on the international stage, especially in the West, which is frankly quite late to coming to this recognition because most of the world does see Palestine as a state? It really does speak to the power and influence of Western countries, doesn't it?
Definitely. While commending such a positive development from Spain, Norway, and Ireland, it is definitely a positive step. We also should not be overstating its significance and importance. We can give an analogy to a patient, someone who's injured, trying to be admitted at the hospital, going to the hospital and realizing that they don't have paperwork, giving them they don't have the papers necessary to be admitted to the hospital. You hand them over some papers. All right, now they are recognized that they can be admitted in that hospital, but that does not mean that the problem is over. That if anything, that means that the problem should be more recognized right now. While it carries some serious legal weight, recognizing a state as such, that means you recognize their right to self-defense, you recognize their territorial integrity, so on and so forth. So that does carry a legal weight for sure, but in the same time, it should not be overstated as a solution to the problems that are going on. Right now, Palestinians are facing genocide in Gaza. They are under the risk of genocide in other territories as well, because what happened in Gaza can extend to the rest of Palestine. Palestinians are suffering from an apartheid regime. Palestinians are locked down within enclaves in the West Bank. Very limited access to their basic needs. Let go of the situation that I just mentioned in Gaza. Right before we started speaking, I saw you reporting about the situation in Gaza, which I think came as a good coincidence that this recognition, while being important and while being commended by everyone who appreciates that the positive development, should not be overstated, and it should not overshadow the reality that should be serious actions in terms of sanctions on Israel, in terms of even expelling Israel from the United Nations until it respects its responsibility.
Hassan, I mean, I think that's the next point that I want to get to, and it's the fact that while this recognition is, of course, important, something that would be even more powerful coming from these countries would be sanctions. Is that possibly something we could see down the line?
Definitely. Now, sanctions are not more of we can't see them as a positive development on the side of the states, but rather as an obligation. The ICC, to which most of these countries are members, has already requested arrest warrants against people involved in including Netanyahu and Gallant, who usually travel to Europe and usually travel to Canada and usually travel to the countries that are members to the ICC and the ICJ. And most of these countries have not recognized Palestine as a state. I'm just to connect some dots here. So now we're talking about an obligation. So sanctions are no longer a positive unilateral step from the side of the state, but rather responding to a legal duty according to their own according to their own ratification of international treaties, starting from the ICC, starting from the UN Charter, which established the ICJ, which just a few days ago spoke about halting the military activities in the Rafah governorate, but also it could be understood to cover the whole territory of Gaza. There is a dispute on the meaning and the limit of that, but regardless of that, nobody is disputing that Israel should not be committing genocide, yet Israel keeps disrespecting these decisions. Now we're talking about actual legal obligations from the side of these states. That includes sanctions.
Hassan, these three countries have said that they are implementing this because it is in accordance with international law, but also they believe that a two-state solution is the only way forward. It's the only way for peace between these two sides. Do you think, considering what we're seeing right now, that this is still a viable option?
I think regardless of what option we put forward, it's not a viable option. It's impossible as long as Israel continues. The problem is not the solutions we put on the table. Every solution will have its pros and cons, will have its serious problems, its serious opportunities. Any political solution that we put on the table can have a positive and a negative side. Yet, all of this is more of a mental exercise as long as Israel continues to be the same, to act the same, to think the same, and to elect the same leaders again with the same mindset. Whether you put forward a solution for 5 states, for another, whatever solution you put on the table, it would not go forward. It will become more of a mental exercise as long as Israel does not respect its obligation and as long as has no reason to pay the price. Israel is telling us very clearly, I am genocidal. I don't give any, like, international law is something that is not applicable to me. Yet we try to be politically correct and speak about Israel coming back to its senses. Israel is telling us that it has no senses. We are seeing it right here, there in Gaza. It's wiping off a whole territory of the map. It says, I'm respecting the ICJ provisional measures, and then killing tens of civilians, burning them down in their tents in the region in the zone that it said 2 days earlier that it's safe. So back to my point, the problem is not the theoretical solution we discussed. Every solution has a problem. The problem is Israel. And there will be no state solution, no one state, no 2 states, no 5 states, no solution whatsoever as long as Israel is not facing any serious pressure, serious as much as sanctions, to go as far as being unseated from the United Nations. Otherwise, Israel does not seem to care much about anything else.
When you talk about serious pressure, many of the analysts that we have spoken to have said that that type of serious pressure can really only come from one country, and that's the United States, which of course has backed Israel for many years. Joe Biden may have said that entering Rafah is a red line. That red line appears to have been crossed, and the US has not said anything about it. They've not taken any action about it, which is then very concerning going forward, because Israel, as you've said, has been able to act without any consequences because it's still backed by arguably the most powerful country in the world.
Definitely. I am of the opinion that if the United States decisively decides to end this war, the war would end in one day. That's for sure. Israel wouldn't have been able to do 5% of what it has been doing without the backing, the blind support of the United States. The relationship between Israel and the United States is similar in many ways to the relationship between Serbia and Republika Srpska, the one that was genociding people in Sarajevo. It's a similar relationship. It's very similar dynamics. The military, financial, political support, it is similar to a case of a complete political adoption of one state to another. Without the backing of the United States, the war would actually end. Now, someone might would say that the US has been talking about a ceasefire for some time, and these are empty words. You are backing them militarily. The ammunition that is wiping off Gazans right now is coming from the United States. Almost every major aspect of the military exercise of this war comes from the United States and other allies, but mainly the United States. So if the United States decides that the war has to end, regardless of the political cost, has to end tomorrow, the war would end tomorrow. But there is no such decision in the United States.
Hassan, what does all of this tell us about international law and the adherence to international law? The ICC, the prosecutor there has requested arrest warrants for 2 Israeli leaders, for 3 Hamas leaders. The ICJ has issued rulings saying that Israel must stop its offensive in Rafah, which of course we know they have ignored. These UN courts, backed by UN countries, appear to only target leaders and governments from the global south. This is the first time that we're seeing a country like Israel, backed by the United States, being brought to such a court. But if they can't be actually enforced these rulings, many then say, what is the point of having this international jurisdiction?
So the international institutions that have been founded after the Second World War, they have their own problems. The international legal regime has its own gaps. The victors of the Second World War played a major role in shaping international law, the rules and the institutions. So yes, international law has problems, has challenges, but the major problem of international law and institutions is political powers, states undermining whatever level of justice that exists within these this institution or within the whole international legal regime. So the ICC has been underperforming in the situation in Palestine, has been ignoring the situation for some time, deprioritizing Palestine. Palestine approached the ICC back in 2009, but then it was not a state according to the UN. So later on in 2015, it approached the court again. And from 2015 until 2021, the case was in the middle being discussed, whether to open investigation or not. And then eventually investigation was launched in 2021. That is already 3 years ago. Nothing happened. From that day until the genocide started, nothing happened. So yes, the ICC as an international institution of justice has been ignoring the situation in Palestine. Finally, it started acting. Now, instead of complaining about the ICC as an institution for not performing its job, which is a very fair criticism, I would look at the states undermining the work of the ICC. Why is the ICC, or why was the ICC not acting in this situation? Simply because they were threatened. Just today, the news were released about the former head of Mossad threatening the former ICC prosecutor in her office, physically threatening her. That was one of the cases that were reported. I think Yossi Cohen, he was in her office, the former prosecutor, Fatih Bensouda, in The Hague. He physically threatened her. There are other rumors about other threats that she received from other Israeli and European diplomats as well, or at least in the presence of European diplomats. And these stories are coming out to the public gradually. Like some of them are out now. I'm sure bigger stories will come out soon. And this current prosecutor has been subject to similar pressure. So the problem is certain powers undermining international law and institutions. Yes, international law needs to be reformed. The institutions need to be reformed. But the bigger problem is certain powers acting as thugs. As simple as that.
Hassan Ben Imran, always appreciate your analysis and expertise. Thank you so much.